if you look at the defensive line, so much depth and interchangeable parts and all that. Through the years, the last 3 years you guys have had Jabal Sherrod on that edge. Do you see one guy replacing him, or is that kind of committee? How do you look at that spot?
Well, I think that's up in the air right now in terms of, we have all those young guys in there that could be potentially take that spot over, Bandigu or Teray, and we're potentially moving Autry out at some, and then Ty Lewis will be out there some. So there'll be 3 or 4 guys that are competing for that position. Jabal was a really good player versus the run. He had some good pressures over his career, so he's going to be hard to replace in terms of that. But we'll just let that play out, relative to the practices coming up here once we get the pads on.
Thanks, Coach.
Yep, thank you.
Joel Erickson.
With Danico, is that something you got to figure out during camp if he can move out there, or you're going to leave him inside, or is that, how do you figure out how much he's going to play in each spot?
Yeah, I think it depends on where we need him. What's beneficial about Danico is that he's played inside and out, and also Ty Lue, he's played inside and out, right and left. So to have those guys that are, not necessarily, flex players, but, in a sense, flex players that they can go in and out. It's good to have those guys because with this scenario we're in this year, you're going to have some guys either go down for certain reasons, or you have to anticipate some of that. And it's good to have guys that can go in and out. So we're excited about having that. And we'll just, scratch where it itches in terms of, hey, this guy's not practicing today. Let's move this guy out because we need more numbers out there, and it'll be good for our defense and good for him if he moves out. Or, hey, guys inside and vice versa. So I think it's going to be good for us to be able to manipulate the D-line that way.
Zach Kiefer.
Hey, Matt. How you doing?
Hi, how are you?
Good. You probably don't have an answer for this quite yet, but how do you think this season – how do you think your coaching is going to have to change this season because of everything that's going on? Frank talked about this a little bit, but there's no way it's going to be normal. Have you thought about the different challenges from strictly like just doing your job, how that's going to play out?
Yeah, that's a great question. And like you said, it's kind of unseen. So it's kind of hypothesize a little bit about what that is and look forward around the corner. I had a boss I used to work for a lot of years used to say, hey, you got to be able to have the chance to look around the corner. And I think we're looking around the corner and we don't really know what's going to happen. But I do know this, that every coach and every player needs to be ready to go to do his job. But also we have to give them some parameters to say, okay, you might have to do somebody else's job and get prepared to do that. We've always had that, and you guys have heard me say this for a couple of years now, the pair and a spare philosophy. Well, that's really starting to play out now because, we need a pair and a spare at every position. That's a coaching position or a defensive position. And the guys that are coming in, we're fortunate because if you look back 2 years ago, we were relying on Darius Leonard and all those rookies and the first-year players to play right away and to start for us. And to some degree, last year was the case too, with a lot of the rookies that we drafted. But we're 1 year down the road past that, and so our guys do have some experience. And now we have to make sure that we're doing a good job of training them and position flexing those guys, as much like the D-line that I talked about, to be able to flex those guys in and out, and also for me as a coach and as the defensive coordinator to be able to move in and out of each position coach to be able to assist and help where I need to do that. So there's a lot of unseen things right now that we don't know that we'll have to adjust, and the philosophy for the coaching staff that we've talked about is the ability to adjust, adapt, and then overcome. and we're going to do that together. We have to have the flexibility to adjust and adapt to the circumstances, and then overcome obstacles and adversities together. And that's what we're going to have to do.
Stephen Holder.
Hey, Matt.
Hi.
You've talked about, the defensive line, at least, trying to get the best four out there, whether it's four, 3, 4, whatever the number is. Do you know what that is? And I don't know that you'll tell us, but do you have an idea of what that is, or is that something that you're going to continue to have to evaluate?
Yeah, that's a good question. And obviously, I'm not going to answer that totally, but
Shocked.
yeah. Well, I mean, you could look at, obviously, having Buckner and Houston out there is great. You got 2 all-pro players that are having great careers and are continuing to have great careers. So you have those guys, and to me, it's like everything else. You have guys that are up and coming players. Like Grove has really had a good season last year. We're excited about having him in there. And then, at the other end spot, you look and see, well, that's up for competition. And we're going to play 8 or 9 guys, and we have those guys up for the game, and they're all going to play 35 to 40 snaps. Some guys will play more if they can keep their loafs to a minimum and keep their intensity right. But we're excited about the group that we have and the group that our organization has assembled.
Jim Aiello.
Hey, Matt. How's it going?
Hi, how are you?
Good. I just wanted to ask, Chris mentioned the other day about the linebacker competition, something he's excited to watch. I was curious if you had kind of a plan to kind of watch that competition during training camp especially, I think between Bobby and Anthony. And do you have a kind of a rotation plan for the season, or is it going to just be, we're going to play the best guy at that time, or whoever wins the competition?
Yeah, that's you have to have a rotation plan. And we had one last year that really, and I'll just go back to last year, what we did, just to kind of give you an example. We had a rotation plan where we said that Anthony Walker was our backup will in case something happened to Darius, and we were going to have Bobby start at Mike. And this was obviously last year, but then again, it'll be different this year. But we're still working through those things right now in terms of talking about it. But that really came into play because Darius went down. He got dinged in the Tennessee game, and also now those 2 guys are starting, for 3 games. And we went 2 out of 3. We won 2 out of 3, beat Kansas City because of that plan, because we had planned that through practice that, hey, when Darius was not going to be in there, we're going to slide Anthony over to the will spot, and Bobby was going to play Mike, and that came to play for us, and it worked out for us. So that's all has to be looked at with every position, not just the linebackers. And, to answer your other question in terms of the competition of the linebackers, that's at every position, but we're going to put guys in spots to compete for each position. If it's the Will, the Mike, or the Sam, or our different sub packages we have, a guy might be a good cover guy and might be able to cover certain players, certain matchup players. So he might get hit that role too. So we're just always looking at each scenario.
Phil B.
Hi, Coach. Thank you for your time, sir.
Yep, appreciate it. Thank you.
I was hoping you could explain a little bit about cornerback. I've read some stuff about Kenny Moore being on the field as a starter, whereas in the past I always saw him as the slot guy running around everywhere and being that key in your triangle. Mm-hmm. Rock Ya-Sin outside, Xavier Rhodes outside, Kenny slot. But then I've also saw stuff that said, no, Kenny's got to be on the field. He's your corner opposite Rock with Xavier fitting in. I know you got time to figure it out, but could you just shed light on your thought maybe on how those 3 fit?
Yeah, so the process of evaluating that is going to be through this course of this training camp, and we'll look and see. And I think everybody has to be ready to go at all positions. Some corners are better outside and some are better inside. But the whole pair and the spare thing has to come to play also, because you're not dealing with a large number. You're talking about, 5, 6 guys that have to be able to play if somebody goes down. and not only are guys that are starters, but the guys that are the back end roster guys that are going to be on our practice squad. Because of the way the practice squad is set up this year, you're able to move guys in and out if you have to. And those guys have to be ready to go with their techniques and fundamentals, in terms of just the basic calls, so that's always plays out. So I think it's important that everybody, Kenny can play outside, he can play inside, TJ can play inside, he can play outside, Marvell's played different spots for us, and Marvell's in that equation too, as the other guys you had mentioned, and he's played some different spots for us. He's played dime, and he's played over a tight end, and he's played outside. So we're constantly looking at all the different combinations, and we're going to continue to do that.
A quick follow on Xavier. What's your message to him in terms of, everybody knows he's trying to recapture, his form from a couple years ago or 3 years ago. What's your message as a coach to him? Is it just a matter of, we believe in you, be confident, get back to maybe doing some things you did before that you spotted on film, or what is it exactly with Rhodes?
Yeah, I think it's when any player comes into our system, what we want to do is really 3 or 4 things. And the number one thing is we want to model for him and show him the perfect picture of the techniques that he needs to have in his toolbox. I think that's so important. And then as a coach, we want to inspire him through his mind and telling him the why of what we're asking him to do. So that's important to model it, then inspire it. And then we're going to be truthful and honest in our correction of his technique and his effort. So we're going to be on top of that just to make him better as a player, and then we're going to have to do a good job because and every player, when they work this technique and we ask them to practice a certain way and play a certain way, this is the hardest thing he'll ever do in terms of practice. And so he's going to need some encouragement. He's going to need some encouragement there to be able to help him along the way. So those are always the things that we do with every player. We model and show, teach. We're teachers first. We do a great job with that. And I think our coaches do a great job with that. Then we have to do a great job inspiring and telling them the why. Then we have to correct, and then we have to encourage. So those will be the things that he hears from us from a day in and day out basis.
Thank you, Coach.
Yeah.
George Bremer.
Hey, Coach. I'm wondering, how creative will you have to be without preseason games to get a full assessment of this defensive end competition?
Yeah, everybody's in the same boat. We're just, the one thing that's nice about the schedule that we have in front of us is we'll have a lot of walkthroughs. And we've traditionally had a lot of walkthrough, on the defensive side of the ball. We've had a lot of walkthrough reps, and we'll get feedback that way, in terms of alignment, assignment, and guys knowing what to do. And then in terms of how fast they're doing it, and how fast they can process it. So if it's defensive in position or any position, I think that the schedule lends to a lot of reps before you get on the field. There's a whole week, 6 days there where we're going to get, walkthrough reps where we're split offensively and defensively, and then another 4 days of review before we even put the pads on. So it really lends for learning and teaching in the appropriate way and an appropriate sequence. So we're excited about that.
Tim Bone.
Morning, Matt. Appreciate the time.
Yes, sir.
Chris was talking on Wednesday. This kind of goes back to Jim's question about linebackers, about how Anthony and Darius and Bobby, he put right up there with anybody in the league. Where is that balance between you have to play so much nickel in today's NFL, but then if you are trying to get your best 11 on the field, maybe the 3 linebackers on the field would be one of your best 11?
Yeah, there's a couple ways you can do that, Kevin. And one of them is to stay base versus sub people, which I think is a good idea to do sometimes. And we've done that in the past. And you can play your zone coverages and certain pressures out of it and certain things you can do out of those, out of that base package versus their sub people. That's one way to keep all three of those guys on the field. The other way is to do things in sub packages. You actually put your sub packages in, and you leave the three linebackers out there, and you can do those things too without giving anything away. But there's a lot of different ways you can maneuver your people to put them on the field. But best 11 is what we're always trying to do. So we'll tinker with some of those things during the training camp here and the practices and the walkthroughs, and then we'll see how it goes and see if it moves down the road.
All right, we'll do two more. Mike Wells.
Hey, Flus, how you doing, man?
Hey, what's up, Mike?
Hey, obviously every head coach, every team is going through this situation of the no off-season workouts. You being around Frank now for a number of years, what is it about him that you believe is that you guys will be able to weather through this storm of what everybody's going through?
Yeah, I would say that being with Frank and his leadership is just first of all, he's uber intelligent. And he's got great instincts. It would be the second thing, because he's able to read the situation and able to adjust to get them and maximize the potential of the unit, maximize the potential of the entire team. So those are really the two things that I feel that he has the tools to work through and maximize our potential as a football team.
And last question, Phil B.
Thanks again, Coach. I'm just kind of curious, how much of a say do you have when you guys are deciding a final roster? Like, can you say, I really need 9 guys in the defensive line, or I really would like 10, or do you get to lobby? Is it kind of everybody in the room? Because the offensive line coach could say, well, I need 10 guys. I mean, how does that process sort itself out? How interesting is that?
It's always an interesting dynamic, but the great thing that's with the Colts organization from the very top, from the Irsay family through the head coach, GM, and then the position coaches, everything is transparent and communication is transparent. So we're constantly in dialogue with each other. If it is in an official meeting or outside of that, just talking as a defensive staff or an offensive staff, or talking to the scouts, everything's transparent. So a lot of times those communications that happen in the official meetings are already pretty much, finalized or starting to crystallize as we go through the process. So it's not that dramatic as it might appear in some other buildings, because we have constant communication and we're always moving towards the final product.